you notice that this wing is not cut lengthwise. Okay, it runs diagonally across the foam board, and the reason I do that is because the way the foam board is pressed, when you look at it, you can actually see very slight ripples to it. Now, there is a better version of foam available, costs 3 times as much, but it also weighs 3 times as much. Okay, and I don't suggest that at all. It's all about weight. Okay, and believe me, these things are powerful. So essentially, I'm going to start, I want to get the longest width that I possibly can. Okay, in this case is 31 and a half inches. Okay, so that's what my wingspan can be on here. So I'm just going to basically draw a line from that point to that point. Just start to make a line here and start to make a line here. Okay, and obviously you're just starting, so you don't have a wing. So in this case, you're just going to use a long straight edge. And you're going to make that line from tip to tip diagonally there. Okay, so there's part of my wing. Now I know that from my template that I've made, that you can only get so long, right? Unless you start piecing it together. So when it's all said and done, the wing tips are 6 inches. So I'm going to straight down from here, straight down from there. You're going to find it will be 6 inches. Or in this case, you're just using this wing, you will use your straight edge. Alright, and then it comes down to there. Now, 6 inches is as far as I can go as far as the width of the wing, so I make a mark down here. Okay, now I'm going to say, okay, after that 6-inch mark, what is the longest distance that I can get? Well, it's going to be from that 6-inch mark to this 6-inch mark here. Okay, so now we've made this line, okay, which is coming down, which is 6 inches. Now, rather than me going ahead and giving you all the crap on how I came to that, I know that I can get roughly 8.5 inches to the center of the wing. Okay, so I got 30 and a half. This is 30 and a half, so we're going to find the center point of that, which is going to be 15 and a quarter. And I'm going to mark 15 and a quarter right there. Okay. I'm going to take my straight edge, pull it over that line, and say, okay, here's my center point of the wing, and I'm just going to draw a line down, okay, down to here. Now, you can make that wing a little bit thicker. So this is, we'll say, roughly 8.5. So if I take this and come, and we'll go down 8.5. Well, look at that, it's pretty much at 8.5 just from my guessing job. I guess that's from building so many of them. Just going to line up that little tiny area here to that 8.5 mark there. And I'm going to come and draw a line there. Now I've got this 6-inch mark that we did over here. And we've got our centering mark right there. So I'm just going to follow that line to the center mark here. Okay, so there we have our wing. Now, this took me a long time to figure out how to get this size of wing, this width of wing, the length of this wing versus the size of motor. This wasn't just kind of just sit down and draw it out and fly it and hey, here's the best flying airplane. I've been building these, like I said, for almost close to a year, you know, and I've built you know, mini planes. So there we have it. There's your wing, and once it's all cut out, if you look at the wing, you know, through the light, you can sort of see that now, rather than the shimmer of the press, the way it's constructed, running totally from front to back. It's now running horizontally, which gives you more strength, okay? It doesn't seem to be that strong just by doing this, okay, but it's surprising how strong it actually is, okay? So don't be alarmed if it feels a little bit weak at this point. So now we're going to cut out that area and we're going to have this wing. So okay, utilizing the bottom half of the same sheet that I cut out first piece of the stab, I've got my die cut on there, and this is a good example to show you on the tail. See how much larger that area in pen is? That's to give me a little bit more of a dragger, so when I'm setting up my radio, you know, it's not sitting on the rudder, things like that. Plus you can build a little bit bigger rudder as well. That has to be obviously straight, okay, completely in line with the front of the fuse. It can be higher, it can be lower. What's important is it has to be, what's the word I'm looking for? It has to be straight. Can't be tilted up, can't be tilted down. That'll change your wing incidence levels. So I'm going to just zoom away here. And it's a beautiful thing because I'm changing my floor in my house, so I get to use my whole kitchen floor as a cutting board. You may don't have that, maybe don't have that. Okay, so I've traced that out. I'm the area of the wing where I'm going to put the wing in that we've cut out. Okay, that's what she looks like when it's, of course, when she's all cut out. And this has to slide in there. So we're going to measure the longest point from this point to this point to where the V is. Make sure that's the middle. Okay, so if this is 8.5 inches, I know that in here I'm going to cut out an 8.5 inch chunk from front to back, and it's going to be 3/8 in thickness, and it's going to line up exactly in line with this cutout area that we're going to do here. Keeping in mind though that it's going to, I'm going to start my line from the bottom part of that cutout so that this wing sits flush with the other part that's going to slide in. I don't know any other way of explaining that, okay, other than this is your bottom cut, and it's going to be considered the top cut of your wing because we're going to go lower than that by 8.5 inches by 3/8 thick. Now, key point, have a good straight edge. Don't just take a, you know, some warped stick, you know what I mean? You need something that's flat and something that's got a straight edge. And I recommend one of these Stanley Fat Maxes. Everybody's got usually a level or straight edge like that, so I didn't include that into my how to build a plane for less than $3 or whatever it was. But okay, so I'm going to line it up on there. Even cutting is important on how you're going to cut because you want the cuts to be straight on these parts, okay? There's an art even when it comes to cutting, you know, as I've seen on YouTube and stuff like that. So got me a blade at an angle, we want to use the blade, okay? We don't want it vertical like this or we're going to rip the styrofoam. I'm basically just going to cut along that straight edge. Just trying to move things along here a little bit. On this back piece here, what I've done is I've just, where I've got this little piece angled off, is I just made a couple little doublers. I don't know if you can see that. What it does, it just gives me a little bit more area there for the tail to sit on there, because it does take some abuse from there. Okay, so we're going to use our square in this case and just cut our flat edge for that 8.5 inches we talked about. Okay, we're going to use our square and just cut out that area for the front of the fuse. Okay. And we're going to do the same on the back of the fuse. A little hint here when you're, I don't know if I can digitally zoom this thing. On this area here now, for the top of the slab, this is where your rudder's going to sit on top of. Just a note here for when you're cutting. I know this is where the cut starts, okay, but I'm going to start my cut a little bit ahead of that, okay, so I can get a nice clean edge started before I get onto the line. That's an important note. Now I know that I've got a really nice edge cut out for that, perfectly straight. Okay, so a little tip on that. Now what we're going to do is the rest of that area, we actually have to freehand it. So that's something to consider. So I'm just going to set this guy down. I know it's already cut from here, and I'm just going to follow my pattern. And I'm going to make a little bit harder score here, and I can sort of run a memory on the card, and she stopped. But anyway, so I've got this area all obviously cut out now. Now this is where I was talking about earlier, this point in the back of the tail, and how the wing is going to mount and where the wing is going to mount. So what's important is that when you look here, this slot, okay, that's where your horizontal stab is going to slide in, and we're going to run this parallel, and we're going to make this slot in the wing parallel with that. So starting the leading part, or the upper part of the wing, will be cut from the lower part following that line. Okay, and it'll be installed in this way. All right. Now the reason I keep on talking about this, and I say this is so important, because if this is, if this is up like this, or if it's down, if I get this straight here, you can see the incidence angle once this is on have to be the same. To give you an example, this is now how this is going to slide onto that piece. Okay, and again, take note, that's going to sit right flush there. Okay, just where she bends in, and that's where the elevator is going to be. Okay, so now here's our slab. So when that's glued, if you don't have the wing cut right, what's going to happen is that the wing is going to end up being, I feel like I'm talking over and over again here, but the profile of this wing has to be the same. Cut it down, negative incidence, and you can see the problems in what happens if you don't get that right. So once, in order to find that exact spot, you can just use the foam board, tie it up, make sure the foam board is straight, and that's where it sometimes has a problem, because when you eye that up, maybe the foam board has a slight little bit of warpage to it. So if you make your line from this, you might be cutting an upper line or something, or a line that's not straight or whatever. So it's best to use your straight edge and then just decide where the wing is going to mount. It's very important that the flat part of the wing, that's your leading edge, okay? And that comes from when you look at planes like Edge 540 keys, those types of planes, they have a straight leading edge. To do this, okay, the flight characteristic of this plane changes drastically. Okay, and I had cut one just by accident and glued it in by accident, and it was my, let it rest in pieces, stubby at the time, and I had the wing mounted a little bit too far this way, and I wasn't happy. Listen, it was great for knife edging and stuff, because the distance from the end of the wing to the tail was greater. Okay, so the longer this fuse is going to be, you're going to have more command in those types of flying than doing a knife edge. The closer this wing gets to the tail, okay, the more air coming off the ailerons, etc., creates a little bit of havoc, but depends what type of flying you're doing, right? These are not designed just to be a knife edge. You can fly this plane in a knife edge. It just has a tendency to want to couple. It wants to couple inwards, right? So you just have to work it out. But so we want to get this going this way. Okay. So now we're going to just make a little measurement. Exactly one more time. How long it is. And we're gonna find our center and we're gonna draw a center line on that, okay? Now this from leading edge to the end is almost 8.5, okay? So, and I'm gonna mount this about 7 inches from the front of the nose, okay? So cut out that hole, creates thick, 7 inches from the front of the leading edge, and about a little under 8.5 inches long. And make sure it's parallel. Top line, or the bottom line on the horizontal stab, whatever that is, this bottom line is your top line of your wing. I just can't stress that enough.